Hello and welcome to the Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Riche of the MHRT Network. Directly over that away, you will see the real Alex Gibbons. Catch him on Arrowhead Addict, and during the regular season, you will get him on the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast. Dude, you got to just make that name easier to pronounce.
Yeah,
It's one heck of a tongue twister.
we're tweaking it. Yeah.
Yeah. We gotta do some kind of an abbreviation or something. Let's just come on now. But anyways,
Yeah.
that is with you and Coach Defense. Hope to see him again in the chat tonight. He had some spicy comments, which I'm sure he's gonna dislike most of what I have for him on this show today. Which just throwing it out there, Coach, and looking forward to hearing your comments and hitting me up in the DMs and whatnot. Down directly below here, we have Raider Transplant, aka Angelo. By the way, disappointed in you today.
What? What did I do?
You are
Shame.
Thank
not
you, by the way,
wearing a
for
green
showing
hat.
up to the show. But what did I do?
You are not wearing a green hat.
Oh, okay. I'm actually going to explain that today. Why I'm not
Okay.
wearing. But thank you for
no,
saying that
there is
because-
green on it. Okay, we're good.
Okay,
All right.
no. It actually is a Donate Life pin, which I always have on all my Raider hats.
Yeah.
The Donate Life month is coming up in April. But yeah, no, there's a whole reason why I'm wearing all silver and black today.
Okay.
Solidarity.
All right, that's good. I will at the very least lead you back in to explain that one at some point for the show. And of course, our latest and greatest Chargers fan here, staple on the show. We have Mr. Robert representing the powder blue and
Nation, baby.
the gold, and lots of stuff to talk about with regards to the division this week. At the very
Yeah.
least, guys, it is entertaining.
Oh,
Okay,
there's been some.
it is
It's certainly
entertaining.
been a turn of events.
Oh yeah.
So, I'm just gonna lead us into our very first topic, and then we will just jump right into it. We're gonna go over a couple things tonight, guys. One is gonna be obviously the Russell Wilson news because, I mean, let's be real, that is history that has been made for all the wrong reasons, but history nonetheless. So let's we are definitely going to cover that. Ladies and gentlemen who are joining us live, spicy comments welcome in the chat. I love to see what you guys have to say about that one. Please bring it on.
Bring it on.
You will 100% not offend me because I have not made my opinions on Russell Wilson shy, and I've been consistent throughout. So we'll just leave it at that. And we're also going to delve into a little bit of the combine. A couple of our favorite players that we think will, maybe fit our team. We're just going to do a quick little kind of lightning round, a little bit on that. Maybe get some feedback from the audience. But we are going to delve a little bit more into the O-line in the middle of the show. Give Robert a little bit more time to talk about his team's O-line and just kind of really flush out a little bit because it is such an important position on the team. And frankly, I don't think the offensive line gets enough credit on podcasts.
Amen.
So we're gonna go ahead and make that happen. So with that in mind, guys, here's the lead-in for the Russell Wilson trade. Denver Broncos go ahead and hire Nathaniel Hackett, likely thinking they're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers. I think
For
Aaron
sure.
Rodgers recognized that the Broncos front office was a dumpster fire led by John Elway. And said no, and then they then proceeded to scramble, panic, and trade away 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 3 players, including Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant, to the Seattle Seahawks for Mr. Russell Wilson, also known as Mr. Unlimited, Dangerous.
Dangerous.
Again, for all
Let's
of the wrong
ride.
reasons.
Let's ride.
Let's ride.
Broncos country, let's tank.
It's been a ride for Broncos country, that's for sure.
Yeah. So that was kind of the lead in. That's kind of what happened there. Fast forward 2 full seasons, and two head coaches, or now the second head coach later in Sean Payton. The Denver
QB whisperer.
Yeah, and Denver Broncos under new ownership, because remember when Russ was brought in, it was not under the current ownership. Have now announced that they have designated Russ a cut. Basically, they're cutting him outright. And
Man,
I'm actually gonna concede all of the financial details to the other folks on the podcast, because I'm pretty sure that will be a point of pride for all of you. So I will throw you that bone.
I kind of feel bad for you, Rich.
Well, I appreciate.
I think my most prideful thing about it is that he got cut before the contract even started.
that's crazy. You did not even have to get...
They literally signed it, slid it, and then were like, "Never mind."
Oh,
Yeah.
bad.
So with that in mind, guys, obviously some, just unbelievable news in terms of impact to the Denver Broncos, record-setting in terms of dead cap hit, all of the things, all of the time. So I'm going to throw over to Robert, actually, see what he has to say about it, to give him some.
There we go. Let's hear from Robert.
Man.
Start with the nicest one, and then we'll work.
Well, to, like you said, not to dwell on the money, because we already know it's rough. 39 dead cap this year, and 48 I think it is next year in dead cap money. So, we said it last week on the show. We've said it in the previous shows. This move is the type of move where it cripples a franchise for half a decade, maybe longer. It's just, you invest all that capital into one player, and he's supposed to be the reason why you guys get over the hump. You had the defense, you had pretty much everything else set. You can even say the wide receivers were set. You had all that in motion. You brought in the coach, and it was like, all right, Russ, here are the keys. Take us to the promised land. And it was like he just immediately took it off the road and crashed into a tree. And it was like, them pulling the contract is like the perfect, it's like the icing on the cake. It's just like the whole way this whole situation played out, it just went wrong at every turn. There was never and I felt bad for us during the middle of the season when he did beat the Chiefs, and that was probably, it's the first time
the 5 games in a row.
Exactly. But in that game in particular against the Chiefs, that was the game that you decided to go to him afterwards and was like, hey, you should take a pay cut. The dude just brought your team the biggest win, the first time this team has ever beat the Chiefs since Mahomes got here. And your first instinct is to be like, you should take a pay cut for us. Like, what did you expect to happen? So,
you got to kick this guy while he's high.
Yeah, I
knock him down a peg.
There was so many. Why not after 70 to 21 or something? Why not after that? Why not after that game go to Russ and be like, hey, we think it's time for you to take a pay cut? At that point, the world looks on it and is like, okay, that's fair. That's fair going to your QB like that. And if at that point Russ was like, no, I'm keeping my money, then I'm agreeable to both sides, because for one side he signed the contract, on the other side they have to honor it, but at the same time they don't, because they could just straight out cut him, but they're still going to pay him anyway. So the biggest thing, honestly, is I think he's still going to continue to play. I think he will go to another team. I think I know the Steelers have been rumored. The thing is, he's better than a lot of what some of these QB situations are right now across the league. He's definitely better than what they have in Atlanta. He's definitely better than what they have in Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, Angelo, but he's better than Aiden O'Connell. Okay, he just is. I'm sorry.
We don't want him, buddy. But
I know. I know you probably don't want him, and I totally get why you wouldn't want him. But there are places in the NFL where he can produce. I say that very loosely, but there are places I feel like where he can go and he can be serviceable. But the biggest thing is too is it's different now because teams can pick him up like he's a rookie QB. They don't got to pay him anything, and they can just be like, sure, we'll take a flyer on Russell Wilson. I mean, what do we have to lose? We pay him maybe $1 million, and
no, it's 1.2.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
1.2. We pay him
knows.
1.
He knows what comes off their book.
That was great, Rich. you pay him 1.2, and it's like, you know what? If it works out, it works out, and great. If it doesn't, we're not upset. Like we knew going into it, it wasn't a foregone conclusion. So, I love this for the Broncos fan base. Obviously, this is just great for me. Especially going into this offseason, everybody was telling the Chargers fans, you guys are in cap hell and this and that, and yet we're already in the positive range for cap, and it's not even, free agency hasn't really started yet. So it's definitely great to not be the only one struggling with the cap right now. But yeah, I could definitely see Russ still playing, and probably be, I'd say Pittsburgh or Atlanta. Throw it back to you,
So,
Rich.
if I can I just want to make 2 kind of quick comments on that one, and then I'll throw over to Alex after. But so there is a reason why I'll get closer to my mic. There is a reason why the team approached Russ at the moment when they did, and this is the part that kind of irked me a little bit with the whole situation, and where the analysts on TV and all these talking heads like Robert Griffin III, who just I really, really just don't like as an analyst.
He just says stuff to just get out there.
Yeah, like he's like, I hate the world, and it's like, dude, you live in it. Shut up. And it's like, it's like just one of those things, right? So basically, there is a common courtesy of sorts that exists within the NFL. And as much as Russ wanted to try to play this off as he was like wronged in the worst way, and oh my gosh, my hurt feelings, and how dare you do the thing after I just beat the Chiefs, and my answer is like, dude, I have a cup, fill it with salty tears. But at the end of the day, we started the season and we were awful. He was the captain of the ship during that time. He wasn't the guy that was putting together the game plan, so to speak, but he was the captain of the ship. And it is inarguable when you look back at the tape when he was starting that he was crashing the ship into the rocks.
Yeah.
Stop it. Right?
pretty
Stop it. Right? That's just dumb. Right? Like, I'm sorry. Like, you have to look at it objectively. If you didn't want that to happen, there is an old Raiders saying that their old owner used to say. And this is the only time you're going to hear me say it, Angelo.
Okay. All right. But thank you for saying it.
Baby.
Just win, baby.
Right?
Just win.
And honestly, there is the age-old adage in sports, which is winning cures everything. And I truly think that is the umbrella here that is the most important piece, which is the Broncos were not winning. Russell Wilson was the quarterback.
They were.
Right? And trust me, like, that there were some bad losses in there, which, by the way, were not all on Russell Wilson, especially the Miami one. So I have to give credit where credit's due there too.
I'm glad you said that.
I am nothing but fair and balanced. There were several other games though that were all on Russ.
True.
He had trash games, like, we're just objectively trash, and he's getting paid a truckload of money, and on the time horizon is due to get an even larger truckload of money. So I'm sorry, the short answer is this: you could have fixed it by playing better, and he didn't. It's very disingenuous to say, well, what do you mean? I didn't do anything wrong. Look at my stats. Like, okay, let's look at your stats. Look at your throws to the middle of the field. That's right. There weren't very many of them, were there? Look at the rhythm and flow in the game that you played. Not very good, was it? No. Look at the speed in which you got the ball out of your hands and you broke out of the huddle. Look at the speed of all that kind of stuff. Look at how you were throwing balls. Look at how you were, Like the one thing that we see from the greats, and this is inarguable. I don't care which one you talk about. You look at Patrick Mahomes, who is in that category of a quarterback, like it or not. You have John Elway, you have Peyton Manning, you have Tom Brady, you have I would even put into some degree at certain stages of his career, Ben Roethlisberger was in that category for a period of time. And at the end of the day, what they all had in common was you saw them build plays. You saw them read the field. They built a play by doing this. And all of a sudden, because they did the thing over there, they had a wide open dude in like the third quarter that they knew in the back of their mind was going to happen. And they're like 60-yard touchdown. And that was literally the way those guys worked. And ask Tom Brady and Peyton Manning in particular, recency bias in terms of how they played the game. Peyton Manning literally broke down film on one of the games with the Broncos and said, I put that play in there myself. And he said, because I knew in the third quarter, I was going to pull out this play, and this play and kill him. And I'm like, okay, like who does that? like literally, who does that? And let's be real, Russell Wilson, not that guy.
No,
okay?
You're not that guy, pal. You're just not that guy.
Not that guy. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, getting back to your original comment, Robert, in terms of after the KC game, because that's really what I wanted to respond to. Kind of went on a bit of a tangent, but I thought it was an important one nonetheless, is the reason why teams approach players on the bye week is because that is the generally agreed upon time when teams do it. So was it perhaps unfortunate timing? Sure.
Yeah.
Was it appropriate given the fact that he was still had just a horrendous losing record at that point of the season and had not really shown that he was going to be the reason at that point, aside from admittedly beating the Chiefs and doing well in that game? I think that is a fair critique in that stage of the season as well. And that's why he was approached when he was. And frankly, the Broncos still played him after he said no.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry, but he doesn't really have much to stand on. And on top of that, he lost key, critical, pivotal games later in the season where he could have put to bed any doubt. And I don't say he chose not to, but he just didn't do it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that ultimately screwed you guys was the contract you gave him. I think even if you just straight up trade for him, give him whatever, gave them the same 3 players, the same draft picks, all that, you could have given them all that. And if you would have not signed him to this contract, this would have been like, you can just cut him now and it's like, cool, we draft a QB. Maybe you maybe even move up to take a QB if you really wanted to, because you're not in cap hell. But now it's just such like, you're going to spend. Now you're going to be spending like, at least 4 to 5 years to get this team like buildable again.
Well, hey, Robert, just so real quick on that though, I think this is one of the pushbacks I'll always give people is you hate it when it's happening to you right now, but do you remember what the time frame was like when that whole thing was happening? And given that time frame, right, like that contract kind of reflects the market. He didn't reset the market, so it kind of reflected the market.
But my thing is like they had 2 years of control. Like why? What was the power?
Right?
Like, what bargaining
guarantees
power
were
did
back.
Russell have to say I want my extension now? I'd been like, no, at least play out one more year so we know that we don't have buyer's remorse, and then we'll extend you. I just don't get why they did it before he ever took an official like in season snap.
It's the Deshaun Watson case. Deshaun Watson had never played a snap for Cleveland. He was actually a full year removed from football prior to that, and Cleveland still said. But even when that happened, nobody really people were skeptical, but nobody batted an eye because it was like, okay, they're bidding against other people because Deshaun Watson was such a valuable commodity. People were after him. Russ
he was picked before Mahomes.
Right.
Everybody was bragging about him before.
Yeah,
Mahomes.
I mean, off-field issues or not, the dude, I think the last year he was a starter had like almost 5,000. He led the league in passing.
Yep, exactly. And so, in the case of Russ, he wasn't. He was just traded, and that to me is where the I feel like the Broncos bid against themselves, and they were like, we need to almost like sign him to this giant contract, almost as like a sign of good faith. And that's the worst thing you can do in the NFL is sign somebody based on good faith.
Yeah.
Well, hey, so like, look, Rich was nice enough to say "just win, baby" for me today and the Raider Nation. So I'm trying to be nice here, guys. I'm not trying to rub it into them. So I'm gonna play a little bit of a devil's advocate to be fair to Rich here, right? Moving into that trade, Nathaniel Hackett being your head coach was about as bad of a move as you guys getting the guy we just fired.
That is
Can
true.
I say that? Like,
that's
Josh McDaniels or Nathaniel Hackett? Which one would you rather?
I think the Hackett hiring was a pretty clear sign that they thought they had a good chance to get Aaron Rodgers. And then that didn't happen. And they said, well, crap. This whole thing was built on getting us a franchise guy. Who else can we get? Maybe Seattle will get rid of Russ. And that's
all right. So I'm glad you said that, Alex, because I want to kind of jump on this. That's what happened to us with the Raiders. Everybody well knows that we got Josh McDaniels thinking Tom Brady was coming over. Then when that didn't happen, instead of us making some smarter moves, what did we do? Oh, hey, let's go get Jimmy G, right? And then, the credit I give Mark Davis is he cut ties. So it's like as bad as what happened to you, Rich, in terms of Russell Wilson, $80 whatever million of dead cap money. We did the same thing, except on our side, it didn't affect our salary cap. It affected, we're paying $100 million to McDaniels and Ziegler and whatever we had to do, right?
Gruden.
So, Mark Davis is
not against your cap, though.
Right, yeah. but it didn't hurt our cap. So at the end of the day, the NFL and all of these owners, they are making millions and millions of dollars, right? So what hurts you is the future. And I think that again, I'm trying to be nice to Rich here. I think that the narrative of, oh, Russell Wilson is no good. You said you always want to be fair, Rich, so I want to hear from you on this. The Nathaniel Hackett thing with Russell Wilson was a failure, and that's as bad. That's worse than McDaniels with Jimmy G. All right, so that was bad. That's worse than Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels. Okay, whatever, done. But when Peyton came in and Russell Wilson played for you last year, was it so bad? Because like Robert made that comment, oh, he's better than AOC, and I disagree. I don't think he is, because AOC, is younger. There's more to the AOC thing. But in terms of Russell Wilson, was he so bad for you, Rich, that he's bottom dollar, or is it because the contract is so high that your expectation is so high that the average play he gave you didn't measure up to what you wanted? But you guys did beat the Chiefs, and if you would have maybe kept rolling with them, you might have maybe squeezed in close, maybe. And again, this is me being nice, Raider Nation. See, if the
I would argue though the money they paid him signifies that he was supposed to play at an elite level, and that's what he, to some degree, played up to until that point. It's not like you don't pay Mahomes $40 million and then be like, well, he threw 1,500 yards this year. Like, that's good. That's all we needed. Like, no, you want him to go throw 4,000 plus and 25, 30 plus touchdowns and win you games, not be the cause of the problem. So, I think, the contract is definitely the reason why, because, Peyton, I think, tried to make it work and then was just like, guys, this is not going to get any better than this. We owe this guy $200 million. Get him out of here.
Right. So now let me reverse this back, because again, I do want to hear from you, Rich. But the big reason, in my opinion, why the Russell Wilson fit, and by the way, there's already news tracking right now that an agent called some other dude that said Russell Wilson totally wants to come to Vegas, blah, 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 blah. The only reason why is because there's such a bad narrative to Russell Wilson wanting his own office, getting everything he wanted in Denver, blah, blah, from Marshawn Lynch to everybody else and his old teammates saying all the things that they said, that we're a locker room fit. So I'll say this. I agree with Raider Nation that we don't want Russell Wilson. But what we do want is people who want to be Raiders. So if Russell Wilson, without his agent, were to hat in hand go to AP and say, AP, I really want to stick it to Denver, and I still got some tooth left in me, I will compete. You don't have to give me the starting job.
Russell Wilson is not going to say that.
That is not Russ.
And that's the problem, guys. And that's really the narrative that's being thrown out there, which is why I don't see him going to the Steelers. I don't see Mike Tomlin dealing with this guy.
He's too corny. He's going to go to someone.
I can't see Atlanta. Are you kidding me? Atlanta's in such a bad spot that they finally have a chance to redo everything. They're not going to take Russell Wilson. So the one spot I'll say that Russell Wilson may or may not have a chance would be Washington, mainly because of Dan Quinn.
Minnesota.
Oh, maybe.
New England.
If they don't bring back Cousins?
I think Minnesota's bringing back Cousins. I honestly think he loves Cousins.
I don't know about that, man. There's been rumblings.
There's a lot to unpack there. So for starters, Russ is never going anywhere and saying, I'll compete. Okay.
Yeah,
so the short answer is no. So there's just remove that completely. Now, you brought up another piece, and that was Hackett versus Russ versus the organization, et cetera, et cetera. That is obviously what you saw in Denver in that first year with Hackett. That is got to be the real Russell Wilson. Yeah. And on top of that, you saw that same energy come out in the I Am Athlete podcast with Russ.
That's why I said he's not going to say I'm going to compete.
Yeah, that's right.
I Am Athlete was terrible.
Like, at what point in that podcast did you ever hear any form of humility at all?
None.
No,
not at all.
I'm sorry, but he presents himself one way when he's in like the podium and speaking to people, like, oh shucks, gee golly, blah blah blah, and then he's on this I Am Athlete podcast. He's like, oh, the game just slowed down for me. It was great, and I'm like, really? Then where did the middle of the field go for you, buddy?
Yeah,
he got slowed down too.
Him.
In some ways, though, Rich, are you a little surprised because he is a Walter Payton Award winner? You know what I mean? Like, that's a big award in the NFL. Russell Wilson.
No, the two are not connected.
Okay.
Yeah. People have got to stop. People have got to stop. And the other. Okay, so I'm trying
to plays to whoever he's like talking to is what he does.
Right. I'm trying to be really, really cautious because by and large, everything is pointing to the fact that the dude is a heck of a family guy. He's got he really stands by his kids. He's got a great relationship, what it seems, with his wife, which is wonderful to see. I love that. I actually love that kind of stuff in terms of on display in the NFL, especially publicly. I like seeing that kind of stuff because I think it sets a good example as a good role model for people to follow in terms of, being there for your family, those sorts of things. Okay. That's the one half of the equation. All right. The other part that I think goes along with the family guy, all that kind of stuff is a portion, not the entirety, but a portion of the charity element, which is, it's kind of all fitting into, Christian faith, family, et cetera, et cetera. That's the part of Russ that I really love. That's the part of Russ that I think really needs to be highlighted and frankly kind of elevated in the public limelight. Now, I'm coming at him from a pure X's and O's on the field, and frankly, some of the nonsense that I'm seeing and have seen when he was here in Denver, as we saw from Carl Mecklenburg, one of the Broncos greats, who basically just absolutely just lost his mind on X the other day, which I was like, doing one of these. And it's simple. When you come into a team, you can't come in at a baseline expecting more than the rest of your teammates, having not proved yourself. And you can't come in with all of these additional demands and a parking space and an office and your own trainers and your own coaches and your own this and your own that, because there's a conflict. And this is the thing that's important. If you are getting taught by your own QB coach and ignoring the lessons of your QB coach on the team, there's a problem.
You're the problem.
You're the problem. Like,
Right.
you are the problem.
Yep.
Now, here's the flip side of that. If you are Tom Brady and have a supplemental quarterback coach and a supplemental trainer and a supplemental nutritionist, and you're able to
6 Super Bowls,
and you're able to pump out 6 Super Bowls, I am probably not going to question your approach. Okay. The problem is that Russ has got 1, and he hasn't really come close to sniffing that again. And it doesn't look like he ever will.
He threw an
and threw a pick and threw a pick to lose one.
I mean,
he's literally a budding joke.
Yeah.
Of
see, if you wanted to be a real captain at that point, can I just say this because I'm such a big Marshawn Lynch guy? A real quarterback would have won against Pete Carroll at that moment in the Super Bowl and would have said, "Guys,
we're running
the ball.
We're pounding this
Marshawn,
yeah.
You're my dude, Marshawn. You take it in, and I'm gonna block for you." Now, if that was Russell Wilson, even if they would have lost,
he would have never left Seattle if that was Russ.
Like, imagine if that narrative happened. I know it's like a Marvel Universe fantasy world here, but imagine if that was the same Super Bowl. They lost at the 1-yard line because Marshawn tried to run it in. The Super Bowl ends, and then Russell Wilson has to take these questions. That at that point, that character would have showed where he would have been like, "Yeah, I changed the play because I believe in my guy, and I do it twice on Sunday." So sorry, everybody.
His ego is so.
Changes. You know,
it got inflated.
This is exactly what I'm saying. Here's it. Every single player on the Seattle offense and defense knew that the play should have been a run play to Marshawn.
Should have been 3 straight run plays.
Yeah. That stadium knew it should have been a run play for Marshawn.
Right.
And if this was Raider football, it would have just been 1-on-1. Give it to Marshawn.
Right. And now the problem here is that was going to be potentially this is literally it. I guarantee it. That was the Russ ego moment. That was the pivot point. That was the thing where it was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was an option.
I think it was a design. I think it was a design pick play.
Yeah, it was that. Yeah, what Alex is saying.
Yeah. Belichick just knew what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think there was a run option in the play. I think
there probably was a check.
Yeah, and a check. Yeah, and a check. But at the end of the day, he could have checked it to a run. He could have done the thing, and he could have said, "I'm standing by my guy," and or at the very least attempted that, because everybody in Seattle would have been like, "Oh, of course you did that."
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah,
and if they would have lost the Super Bowl, giving it to Marshawn 3 straight times, nobody would have ever batted an eye. Everybody would have walked away from that Super Bowl and being like, you know what? Best player, 1 yard line. He couldn't get a yard. I would have done the same thing. You know, like you would 10 out of 10 times in that situation, you run it with Marshawn every single time.
So anyways, getting back to just the Russ and the piece here, and just kind of tying a bow on what all of you have said so far, we saw a tremendous amount of ego from Russ. We also saw the organization, not only with Nathaniel Hackett, but also with the front office, not reining it back in. They just let it go wild, and they let Russ just do his thing. And at the end of the day, when you have a player that believes that they are bigger than the team, which is clearly what took place in Denver when Russ was there under Hackett, it's never going to work because they're not going to accept the discipline because they feel that they're above it. And they've been allowed to do all of the things without any accountability. And these are all major issues when it comes to a team sport. and where everyone needs to work together to win a game. And when one player in football, while they can certainly be a reason why you won the game, they are not the only reason why you won that game. And that's just the way that football works. And that's a relatively good segue, generally speaking, into our next topic. But I do just want to add one more thing to that as well, which is Russell Wilson is going to have a real interesting issue coming into this next season. And this is what none of you touched on, and I want to throw it out. I want to get some comments from the chat on this one because I'm super interested to see what they have to say. So here's the conundrum that Russ has. He can take that vet minimum to stick it to the Broncos out of spite. The problem by doing that is that a team really doesn't have much of a vested interest in him.
Yep.
And
I was going to talk about this.
And on top of that, this is really his last modest kick at the can. So he's got the guaranteed money coming from Denver, which is going to be, that's his last big payday likely anyway. But then he's got this last kind of like half kick at the can, which is, can I maybe get to a team like the Colts, like the Falcons, like the Patriots, like any of the Steelers, and kind of finagle, maybe a 3-year, 20 mil a year deal sort of thing, or 18 mil a year deal sort of thing, to solidify myself as not a bust, not a wash, and force that team to have skin in the game with me, so that I'm not just like a, kick to the curb if I don't work out sort of thing. $1.2 million is a rounding error for these football teams. So literally, like a team could literally cut him in the middle of the year and be like, I don't give a crap, just get gone.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like they won't, why teams are scared to sign him to, or scared to commit to him.
Robert, I don't even think that they're scared. It's just,
I just don't think they will.
The league is small. The league is so small that they're like, dude, your bad reputation is carried for so long now.
Yeah.
And if we count it all the way back to that Super Bowl interception, it's been a really long time that you've had this very bad reputation that everyone in the league knows about. So I'll tell you what, like for all the Raider fans, I mean, I see some going, oh, you can't beat a minimum vet deal for Russell Wilson.
I don't think he's taking that.
It could be really bad for us, actually. That could be a really bad thing. So I'll make a deal with the Raider fans, because I'm one of the people vehemently saying, no, we do not want Russell Wilson. But I'll tell you what, if Russell Wilson wants to be signed to the practice squad, okay, and then he can compete his way up, I'll give him a shot.
Russ and compete don't go together in a sentence.
He's definitely not doing that.
Well, there you go. Then he won't have a job.
I think the only way Russ takes a backup role is if he tries to go test the market now, realizes no one's going to give him anything more than $1.5 million just to go a little bit above, and he has to sit out a year and humble himself to realize, like, I'm not this hot commodity that with 4 or 5 teams just clawing to bring me in. Like the allure of Russell Wilson ended when he went to Denver and didn't have the like magic of the beginning of his career in Seattle around him anymore. And, the stellar defense that was ahead of its time and all these other players that kind of made him look better than he was. And now I think everyone's seen that. I did want to say, though, in terms of it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think like Cousins and Fields have to find new places first before Russ gets into any sort of serious fold. But the guy I follow on X, Andrew Brandt, pretty well-known football follow. It used to be a GM of the Packers and is an attorney as well. But he kind of, when someone was talking about that, he mentioned, and kind of what you said, Angelo, the league's so small that other teams don't really want to just screw over another team that badly. So it's like, he says, ideally, if someone's going to go with Russ, they're going to sign him for more than that vet minimum, knowing like it's kind of like I'm scratching your back now. So if I'm in this situation, you don't screw me over type thing. So I think that we'll see a market probably pick up once we see where like Cousins goes and what teams can move up and everything
honestly,
else.
Alex, I see a press. If what you're saying is going to happen, the only way I could see Russ even playing this next season is if there's a press conference with Russ Wilson eating basically whatever he needs to eat, the humble pie that he needs to eat. So he could apologize to the Broncos fans. He could apologize to everybody and try to, because there's no way you can change this narrative that he's a super diva that's super old. It's kind of like a singer that thinks they're still a rock star when nobody's buying tickets to it anymore. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, man.
And
like,
charging like $300 a ticket.
Exactly.
Oh, you mean like Madonna?
I was just
come on, stop. Rich, you gotta stop, man. You got to stop that, all right? First of all, I'm an 80s baby, and Madonna is amazing. Secondly, it even crossed over to my brother and my sister who went to the Madonna concert at the Forum just recently. So stop it, Rich. Madonna's an icon.
Right. My comment still stands. Anyways, with regards to what you just said there, and I'm going to tie this bow, and then we're going to transition right over to you, Robert. Ultimately, this is the most important piece. Russ has got two major issues. He's got an ego issue that he has to attempt to course correct in the public opinion, and number two, I think it has now been proven that Russ cannot and was probably never the reason for the team's success. Is that he was a very good cog in the team's success, and as a result of that, he needed a good offensive line, he needed good wide receivers, and some other skill players. And with that transition, I'm going to toss over to you to talk about your team's offensive line and why, despite having some challenges with your O-line, your quarterback has still actually shown that he's a better quarterback than Russell Wilson in the National Football League, because he has kind of risen above some of the challenges on the team and still shown out. But your offensive line is likely a good-sized reason why your run game has suffered pretty substantially, in addition to scheme. So with those kind of dusting sprinkle lead-ins for you to run with, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it right on the head. This running game has significantly faltered this season, especially. And I know, like I said, we've talked about it multiple times. Obviously, losing, Corey Linsley is it's just so hard to overcome. I don't care how great Will Clapp is, and I love Will Clapp, but he's not Corey Linsley. And it's just impossible to replace that kind of production and that kind of leadership on the O-line at the snap of a finger. So, although the O-line should have been, and this is where I say Telesco cannot draft for depth whatsoever, because we get one injury and it's all over. He has nobody else ready in line to go. Jamari Saylor is the only exception to that, and he was surprisingly good. But then again, when you have terrible coaching and terrible GM front offices, you're going to put them in positions to fail. And that's ultimately what this O-line was. I feel like this O-line, talent-wise, just across the line, is great. I feel like we have a lot of talent there. They have just never been coached the right way. And it's been prevalent since Herbert's rookie year, because I think they were honestly the worst O-line that year, if I'm not mistaken. They were definitely bottom 3 in like running and passing. And yet Herbert still won Rookie of the Year. And so that's why it makes me laugh when people say, oh, well, Herbert can't carry that team. And Herbert is, he's not a great QB. He constantly falters and constantly fails. And it's like, I don't think it's Herbert. If you were to look at the entire team and be like, here are the top 3 things why this team is constantly failing, I don't even think Herbert's in the top 20. He is like the furthest reason why this team continues to fail itself year in and year out. And like you said, Rich, it starts with the O-line.
Just to interject there real quick, I do think he has a single question mark.
Oh, he does.
Which is that clutch element that you see, that fire element. So, for example, it's basically what makes Mahomes so great.
Right.
And frankly, it's also the Tom Brady gene, if you will, that we saw from him too, which is that it's my time.
Aaron Rodgers had it.
Yeah, yep. Aaron Rodgers had the same. Yeah, exactly.
The thing with that, though, and I'm so glad you mentioned Mahomes, Brady, and Rodgers, every single one of those QBs had a head coach behind him saying, "You got this. Go. I trust you." Herbert has never had that. He never had it with Lynn, from Lynn going out to a press conference and saying, well, that's why he's a rookie QB, after he just went toe-to-toe with Mahomes and the eventual champions that year. So it's like, okay, you didn't believe in him at all, so you were gone. And then you have Brandon Staley, who I didn't love the hire when it initially happened. I wanted to be obviously optimistic about it because we just had Herbert come off this amazing season. Obviously, it didn't really translate to wins, but you saw the talent. You saw that you had the franchise QB. And so now it's like, perfect. We got the guy at QB. We have a ton of cap space because we were terrible last year. And now we got to bring in a head coach to get the most out of him because he's on a rookie deal. You don't got to pay him anything. And the rest of the team already had talent around it. You know, it wasn't like the head coach was going to come into to barren cupboards and just nothing. He had the QB. You had Eckler at the time. Eckler was balling out. Had Mike Will. Had Keenan Allen. You had guys that were, and on the defensive side too. I don't even want to get started on that, but this team had talent and was ready to compete. And then you go out and you hire a first-time head coach with zero experience coaching offense, coaching QBs, and I get it. It's for the money, and that's why everybody was so mad about, or so pissed at Spanos, because the dude never spent. He would never want to open up his wallet, and that's why I feel like now you bring in Harbaugh. This offseason, I had no Charger fans have been through this before. This offseason truly does feel different because all these issues started from the top, started with ownership. And for the first time, at least that I can remember being a Chargers fan, I'm actually seeing my owner make the right move. Not care what he has to spend on it, but to go out and get the right move. Even if we don't do great this year, the fact that he actively went out and signed Harbaugh shows me that he's serious about winning, because he would have never done this in the past. He would have never gone after the biggest coaching fish in the ocean. He didn't do it with Reed. He didn't do it with Brian Daboll. He didn't do it with, and Daboll was in the building. He didn't do it with so many of these coaches. So to see that change come from the top and to hopefully see it trickle down. I love the coaching staff that Harbaugh is putting together. We've talked about this before. Harbaugh is a hard-nosed, stuff, pound the rock. We're gonna run it down your throat, and we have a QB that if you want to put 7-8 in the box, he's gonna throw it over your head in a heartbeat, and you're gonna regret stacking this box up. So I feel like we're at 5 right now. We were talking about this a little bit in the pregame. We're at 5 right now. There is multiple reports of many teams trying to move up. So
Sky's the limit.
Exactly. If somebody is offering you, and we were talking about, like I said, Angelo, we talked about this. If somebody wants to offer you 3 first-round picks for you to move back into the early teens, maybe middle teens, absolutely you should take that 100%, because this draft is so O-line heavy, and we could use pretty much any position. We could trade back even further and get a center. You can take one of the top tackles if you do want to stay at 5, or maybe you move back a couple more spots, 3, 4 more, you stay in the top 10, you get a good tackle. However, and I do want to stress this, and this is to put into my little title, there has been talk that the Cardinals are looking to trade out of 4. Realistically, the Cardinals were the only team we were scared of to take Marvin Harrison Jr. for him to not be available to us at 5, because the Bears are taking a QB, the Patriots are going to take a QB, and the Commanders are probably going to take a QB. So the Cardinals were really the only.
The Patriots is the one team I disagree on. I think that they're smart enough to know they need a lot of pieces. But
do you think they take a wide receiver?
I think they've said that as much too, that they're not trying to go for a QB.
Yeah. See, thank you, Alex. Like that's what I'm trying to tell you is if you think about Gerard Mayo, and then when he says the code word, most important player, if you're doing the Raider way, most important player is the left tackle. You know, you solidify that, then you start
You want to take Joel at 2 or 3? Be my guest. All right, I got no issues with that. If they want to take a tackle at 2 or 3, I'm great with that.
Oh, I think they're going to try to trade out too.
I mean 3. Yeah, Patriots are gonna trade out of 3.
I was gonna say my answer to that is if you're trading into the top 3 or 4, you're taking a QB. I don't think anybody's trading into the top 3 or 4 to take Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, you're 100% true. The 2018 draft with Mayfield, Darnold, there were so many move ups and trades that happen. I think 100% it's going to be similar.
Yeah.
So good point, Robert.
If that's in that case, I know we really hate to coin, that certain rookies are just them. They're him. Marvin Harrison Jr. is him.
Absolutely.
If you take him, I got zero issue with it.
Dude, that's the next Megatron. He's the next Calvin Johnson. He's Megatron, man.
He is. I mean, I just watched film on him, and it's like I almost don't even want to watch other film on wide receivers because it's he's it. This dude is everything. So barring him being available at 5, you absolutely trade back here. You pick up more pieces, pick up an O-line, pick up a tackle, a right tackle, or if you really want to go further back, a center. Losing Corey Linsley is such a massive blow to this team. Just everything, his pedigree, his leadership, the rallying of the troops. I mean, you could just see it in games where that connection between quarterback and center, and I saw it, firsthand with Phil Riv and Nick Hardwick. It is such a crucial. I think people really underestimate how crucial that relationship needs to be, because there's so much trust in that connection, because it's the QB look, I'm relying on you guys. This play isn't going anywhere if I don't get the protection up front. And as much as talented as you do need an O-line, those guys got to have to want to block for your QB. There's a big difference between, and we've seen it, where if the O-line, if the team doesn't believe in the QB, you just see and the thing I loved is when I saw last season how much the team, we were kind of here, and then how much it just plummeted once Herbert went down with an injury. And that, to me, it obviously it sucked to see my team just get absolutely obliterated those final 4 weeks, but it gave me a little bit of hope in knowing okay, these guys really do play for Herbert. For anything that the media tells you that he's not a great a leader or whatever it is, whatever the questions he had coming out of the draft, this dude is going to lead us to the promised land. And if he can get the guys around him, the O-line, the receivers, the defense especially, to believe in him, be like, we want to get the ball for this guy because we know that he's going to go down and score for us. It's such a massive need for this team that we've never had. We've never had a solid O-line with this team since Phil Riv was here, since back into the 90s. This O-line has always been the detriment of this team. And if the Chargers want to do anything at all this year, you got to address that O-line in some regard. I don't even care if you take 5 out of your 7 picks with it. Get depth, get tough, because that's what this O-line needs, is toughness.
So we started talking about this last week, but obviously we kind of backed up on time, so I wanted to give you just a little bit of time on this. You have a new coach, somewhat of an unknown offensive system, and that's a pretty important thing, knowing what you're going to run and how you're going to run it, because for example, that could mean that a good portion of the dudes you already have in the building may fit it perfectly, and you don't some of their poor performance could have been as a result of basically being put in positions that don't suit or fit their skill sets. I mean, Alex, just as a former lineman yourself, I came from a rugby scrum, so I can kind of speak to some of those elements myself personally. If you're playing a certain style, and let's say you're a big road grader but doesn't move well, and you're being asked to play outside zone, I'm going to say you're going to look like dog water. right? But if you're a dude that's kind of quick, fast, and strong, and can move, and have some semblance of technique as you're doing it, you're going to look just absolutely incredible, and probably just that'll be your jam if you're an outside zone. Right? Like, I think that's a, fairly accurate statement to make, right? And so the question ultimately for you, Robert, is what offensive system do you believe you're going to be playing? Who on your team do you think would fit it? And then therefore, as a result of the guys that fall away that don't fit it, are any of those positions premium ones? For example, are they maybe more important to your team than maybe another wide receiver? Although I would argue that given the age and injury issues at the wide receiver position for the Chargers, I could easily be convinced that taking that wideout is
the wide receiver.
Like look, I'm not going to be sitting there saying how dare you do the thing, because of course that makes sense.
Right. You'd be getting Keenan Allen's replacement in probably a year.
Yeah. Well, you'd be getting like I said, hey Robert, like remember when we were talking earlier about Raiders trade up? That's even a hard pill to swallow. So you're giving up Marvin Harrison. If there's a chance for you to draft Marvin Harrison, is it worth it?
That was my only gripe with trading back, is if he is available at 5, then you have to take him. Then it's just and there's no. It's almost at that point, it's like everything just goes out the window. The best possible player that is a non-QB fell to you at 5. You do not tempt fate, or it is fate that he fell to you at 5. You take him. You don't even, no questions. You chuck your draft board. You're like, there's nothing else that needs to be said. You take him at 5.
You put the card in before the clock.
I'm right
even
there with
starts.
you too, Robert. Because I would love to see Marvin Harrison in the West. I would love to. I think it would increase everyone watching us. So instead of everybody trying to watch us because they want to see the Chiefs play, I think that like if you have Marvin Harrison and then he's playing Denver, everybody's going to tune in like, oh, I want to see Denver Chargers, even if they both stink, because Marvin Harrison's playing. Like, he's that good of a player, man. He's that good.
100%. And this draft is labeled as a offensive or a O-line, wide receiver heavy. Those are like the 2 big position groups in here. As sad as it is, not sad, but as crazy as it is to think, the gap between wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 is so much bigger than O-line 1 to O-line 2 that that's why it's such a negotiable thing. That it's just, the talent is just too much. And I know people say, yeah, but you don't need it. You just drafted a wide receiver last year. I don't care.
That Quentin Johnson is not.
Quentin Johnson is not. It's not even. He couldn't even sniff his jockstrap. Okay, you absolutely get Marvin Harrison Jr. on this roster if that's the move. If he's available there at 5. If not, you go the route. You trade back, build more capital, get more depth on this team, especially on this damn O-line. Because goddamn, man, keep Herbert up, right? We've seen it. We've seen what Herbert can do with a clean pocket. We've seen what Herbert can do with a terrible pocket. So like it blows my mind that I mean, our luck is just so awful because obviously, you get Lindsley and that's like a great signing and it doesn't even, the heart situation I feel for him.
No, I love the passion too, Robert, because you are young. You're in your 20s, but Herbert to you is Dan Marino. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, Dan Marino, and that's your Dan Marino. So it kind of sucks to see your Dan Marino getting pounded. Dude. Not, when you made it to the playoffs, right? I mean, I don't want to bring up that, but ouch, right? Like so many things. So
yeah.
To tie a bow on your team, Robert, just real quick, because you keep on bringing up Lindsley, but you only grazed over kind of what you need to do. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, your center is that.
Yeah.
He's the straw that makes the O-line work, right? And so if I was your GM and you somehow end up with Harrison Jr. at 5, I kind of agree. I think you gotta pull that trigger, because right now your wide receiver room is often hurt, and Allen is not going to last forever. No. But what I would do for you guys though is, because of the other positional value and because you truly need a dude, you need that guy. Mm-hmm. When you're getting to picks 30, 31, 32, maybe even 29 in that first round, the Chargers should absolutely be making calls to trade back up into the first round 100%. Because a 5-year cost-controlled center, if you can get that center kind of in that block in the draft, mm-hmm. and you can actually get your pick of the centers, assuming it's even possible, I think you do it. Now, there is that one guy that he's kind of showing out, and he may end up going somewhere in the kind of mid to mid-late first.
Talking JPJ?
Yeah. We're talking Jackson Powers Johnson.
Yeah.
When I get to my part, I'm about to blow people's minds on
what
Jackson Powers Johnson is.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? If we take what's his name? Zach Frazier out of West Virginia, and you move up into the 20s, maybe to take him, I got no issue with that.
You might possibly be able to take Zach Frazier in the second round.
Yeah.
You could. And then here's the other thing is, so to kind of push back a little bit with you, Rich, if I was the Chargers GM, right, and I'm playing that role, I would trade right now early. I would trade right now to just get the highest bidder, because honestly, with whatever you have in pieces, I had Chris Kimber on Sunday. Thanks, by the way, Richie, for showing up to that show. It was a fantastic show. A lot of people really liked it. We talked about the trenches, and he's a Harbaugh expert. This guy is a Michigan guy through and through. He's been watched everything. And what he's told me is Harbaugh likes to build. He likes to build inside out, and it takes him a while. So I wouldn't put it past Harbaugh to take all of his Michigan guys, because I can see Drake Nugent, Trevor Keegan, all going in that third, fourth. But if you trade early right now and get a ton of picks to build the line, oh, you're in a great place, because there's going to be a lot of great O-lines in that first, second round. If you had like a drop down first and then 2 second rounds and 2 thirds, you could really build your line. Like, really build your line.
I think the only reason why you wait till draft day is because the teams are going to get desperate. And that too. Obviously, you want to see Marvin Harrison's there. But the biggest thing, especially for the Chargers, is we're in a good enough position draft wise to where you can kind of sit back a little bit and not totally jump the gun. You can jump the gun once the draft is started, and you're like, all right, our guy's there. He fell to where we're comfortable in trading up to. Make the move. 100% there. I'm with that 1,000%. That level of thinking is what I would do. You want to see what's available, because obviously the draft is crazy. Nobody ever can predict all 32 first round picks. It'll just never happen. Teams reach, players fall, trades are made. So especially in this draft, I'm telling you guys, top 10, it's going to be all QBs, wide receivers, and O-line. That is the only positions that are going to go in the top 10. It's a very, very offensive heavy draft this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I kind of do see, I do think that if the Chargers were smart, they would attempt to solidify that center position. My concern is that it is such a nuanced position, and the problem is that Harbaugh is going to probably have a few guys that he absolutely does not want to get past, get let go, whether or not they're Michigan guys or not. You got to remember, he's only 1 year out of college, and this is actually where he is uniquely positioned from most other coaches that are in the NFL. I mean, this is what so many people are kind of missing in all of this.
He knows all of the good ones. He knows every single good offensive line. He was trying to recruit them.
Right. Like this year, next year, and the year after, like you have a unique position by having Harbaugh as your head coach. You start on a steep decline after that because you only have so much headspace to store the drafts and the information on it, right? But he would have had all these dudes in his Rolodex for recruitment and stuff, and knows all the things about all those guys, which is really what makes head coaches at the college level so unique. And so I really am concerned. I'm concerned for your team, happy for mine. That I think that he'll let someone go that he shouldn't, and then you'll get that guy end up showing out like the center that they drafted in Tampa, who was like third round and he's like an all-pro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're going to miss out on a guy like that because Harbaugh says, well, I like the D tackle better. It's like, well, the D tackle is now in another team's practice squad in 4 years. And the center that was there that everyone else wanted you to draft, well, he's now a perennial all-pro and he's playing for that team that either made it to the playoffs every year or at least the dude is just showing out. And so my concern is that you're going to end up in a position like that. But with that in mind, I'd like to kind of continue this trajectory in terms of draft players, combine, etc., and start expanding this discussion a little bit more and start discussing our kind of combine picks and whatnot for our teams. We're going to give you 3 each. And obviously, Robert, you're going to only get 2.
Because
you took a lot of time, Robert, but that's okay.
No, it's we already know one, so I
see.
I
okay.
don't. We don't.
Yeah, you've already mentioned Marvin Harrison.
Okay, so you only get 2 more, Robert.
Yeah, you only get 2 because it's already one's already taken. Like you're
That's fair. That's fair, Rich. I accept those terms.
You could trade down into second and pick up 2 twos, though.
Yeah. Can I trade? Can I trade with you for like one of your draft picks, and you can have 2?
So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna throw Alex first since he hasn't started off any of our segments this show. I'd like to kind of hear Alex's kind of picks that he liked for his Kansas City Chiefs, and it'll be really interesting, actually, Alex, to kind of hear what you have to say and who you're eyeing, because coming off back-to-back Super Bowls, I would argue actually for your Chiefs that this draft will be one of the most pivotal ones for your team, because
I agree.
If you don't hit picks and knock them out the park, this could be the beginning of the end of sorts, because when you pick that low or high, depending on your perspective, you need to still hit on those draft picks. Otherwise, you're going to suffer, unfortunately, as a result.
And Alex, before you say it, and really, it's the Chris Jones thing, right? Because if you spend all your money on Chris Jones, you better hit this pick. You need some O-line help. So,
I mean, not really. They definitely have the best left guard, center, and right guard in the league.
True.
I mean, they need a left tackle. Unfortunately, they paid Jawad Taylor, so they're stuck with him, but did win a Super Bowl with him. But I mean, I wouldn't say they need O-line help to like significantly bad. But I mean, I do echo your thoughts, Rich, in that this is a very important draft in what they do, especially considering, that we're about to probably give a bunch of money to Chris Jones. All the reports out are if they can get, somewhere between 26, 28 million, that he would stay there. I mean, that's what's being reported. I don't know. I
just want to tell you right now that we're offering him 4 years, 120.
I get that.
100 million guaranteed.
We do this every time. I get that they're going to offer him more money, but who has won more Super Bowls and who has he had success with? I mean, that carries some weight as well.
I agree.
Which is why we see reports that he's saying, "Hey, if you give me 28 million, I'll finish out my career here." And I think that's why the news is echoing kind of those conversations going. And, we're obviously seeing them shopping around Snead as well, trying to get a second round pick, for that. And at least the initial reports for what they're worth seems to be there's a handful of teams interested in that. So we could potentially see them get more capital, which I think only opens the door for Brett Veach to get aggressive in this draft, like we've seen him do, and go get, who they're targeting. Like who that is only that front office knows. But me being the outsider looking in would think it's either a wide receiver or a tackle, because those are, I think, the two most glaring holes that are left that they've tried to kind of patch with free agents in the past. And, it's panned out to some degree, but also wasn't the, long-term fix that they think. So I think we're going to see them traditionally past few years have gone defense. I think we see them shift to investing a little more in offense early this draft. So, I mean, first guy I'm going to talk about, and the three I picked two were more focused on that pick 32, or like I said, I can see him moving up as well if someone falls. But, the first guy that really sticks out from the combine, probably on everyone's list, is Xavier Worthy. Goes out from
that 40 really got you excited.
Well, I mean, that's been the missing thing, right? Is like they had Tyreek. You saw what Mahomes could do with Tyreek. I think that is the, and I mean, I'm not an idiot. We see it every draft that someone goes and runs a 4.2 and then shoots up the draft boards. Hey, Raiders fans would know Darius Hayward Bay, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. No.
So,
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
He could be
for that.
But I think that, and at the same time, he is he's like Devontae Smith. He's like a skinny Batman. I think he's like 175 pounds.
Yeah, 165.
But that's why I think that the Chiefs that's the kind of guy they should target, because he could be the complementary speed piece to Rashee Rice. He's not gonna come in and you're gonna be like, you're wide receiver one. And that's why you see Devontae Smith and that type of player be successful, is because they're like the Robin to, AJ Brown or someone else. So, I think that's the type of player. I think that's someone that stands out to me, because one, I think he'll be available with just the other ungodly receivers in this class. That I don't think that him running a 4.22 is going to pump him above Neighbors or any of these other guys. So I think that he's still a very much a realistic option. And to be frank, I mean, since they moved on from Tyreek, they haven't had that, that vertical, just speed guy. And I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Tyreek, but at the same time, Tyreek Hill was not Tyreek Hill when he came into the draft. He was a tweener running back, slot receiver guy. I mean, his first year, they just like found a way to give him the ball 5 times and he scored. And then they turned him into the wide receiver he is. So, I think that's the type of prospect they're probably targeting, and, at least has the raw intangibles to come in, and if he's got his mind right and puts the work in, turn into someone of that caliber. I mean, it is a draft, so crapshoot with anyone, but that's, wide receiver route, that's probably the realistic one I'm looking at. I'll keep it there. I won't go with more people. And then,
Hey, no, the one thing I was going to say is don't be surprised, and this is just because I've watched so much effing tape on Jane Daniels, that the Chiefs are looking at Brian Thomas, because Brian Thomas ran the 4.3. That's what I was about to say. But he's a big dude, man, and he's fast. And I got to tell you guys, I mean, this was my whole thing about that Jane Daniels. It's like, if you would have taken those two same receivers, Neighbors and Thomas, and throw them on all the other teams, those quarterbacks might look pretty amazing too. So
I was about to say Brian Thomas, but then I was like, that's me. I'll be talking about 4 people then. So, but he did only run 0.12 seconds slower than Worthy. So but then going tackle or offensive tackle side, looking at Troy Fountainu. I don't know how to say his name. Fountainu. I think he's more of a realistic option at tackle.
He's a guard, really, but yeah.
Well, I mean, that was the question with him going into the combine, is it because he looks like short when you watch him. He just doesn't look like he has the length to play tackle. But I mean, he was measured 6'4", 35-inch arms. And I don't know if you know how they take measurements, but they really try to screw you. So my buddy in college had, I think 5 teams came to our school to like measure him. And I mean, he always measured at 6'6", and they told me he was 6'3.5", because they made him like push his knees together and like like that's how they take it. So it's, you know, if you come out of the combine at 6'4", then you know it's pretty legit measurement for
bigger.
NFL standards. Yeah. And you know, 35-inch wingspan. So I think the frame and what he put on in the combine shows that he could be a tackle. And I think that that's probably, like I said, a realistic target for the Chiefs if they do look for offensive tackle. That being said, you know, we talked about it being a heavy draft, so I think there's some other options later. That's why I think you see him make a bigger splash and go wide receiver or some kind of offensive weapon. You know,
the sexy pick is what you're saying. It's the
right,
sexy pick. You're not going Tyler Guyton at 32.
No,
you're going
my,
Brian
my
Thomas,
real
Xavier Worthy.
sexy pick is like, hey, if Brock Bowers falls, trade up for him.
God no,
Oh,
God
no way,
no.
dude.
That's
I
my
swear to
sexy
God,
hot
man.
take, dude. If that happens, that's the
Oh,
fifth infinity stone.
I mean,
I
that's
would
it,
turn
man.
off the
That's
draft.
it. You just solidified your next great Travis Kelce if you guys get Brock Bowers.
Exactly. But yeah, so yeah, that's in multiverse. They are able to trade up, and a team actually it lets them do that. You know, but
Okay.
I don't see that happening. So yeah, talk about tackle, wide receiver, and then kind of I picked a guy that would definitely be in the later part of the draft, but I think is a to use your word, is kind of an unsexy / sexy pick, and just how he looked at the combine, and that's Peyton Wilson, the linebacker from NC State.
Yeah.
And now
he's good.
I say him because you know they're got Tranquil and Willie Gay are pending free agents. They're going to have to pay Bolton after this year. So I think they bring Tranquil back because he's going to be the more team friendly ball player in terms of money. And I think Willie Gay only comes back if he tests the market and realizes teams aren't valuing him what he thinks. So that's why I think we see them, you know, build back into the linebacker core a little bit, you know, decently early in the draft. And that's why I wanted to note Peyton Wilson, because I think he's probably more of your second to third round pick just because he is older. He's 24 and has a decent injury history. But if you saw him at the combine, I mean, he was an athletic freak for sure. He kind of looked like Drew Tranquil to some degree, you know. And I mean, they had the fastest 40, you know, measured 6'4", 230, like has the frame. So that's a guy that I would look at to bring in and add some more depth to the defense, but, you know, sticking to the trend of we're focusing on a sexier offensive pick early in the draft.
Yeah, by the way, Alex, if you guys don't bring back Tranquil, which it's possible because Telesco is the one that drafted Tranquil, he might come to us, but Peyton Wilson.
Everyone wants to go to the Raiders, right?
Everybody wants to go. Hey, man. Hey, when Richie, is that the segment for me to start talking, or do you want to say something to Alex?
Well, I haven't really spoken much about my Broncos, so I'm gonna quickly go through my guys. I am 100% only about the trenches for my Denver Broncos.
Amen.
I like there's like the shock of the century, right? Like, you know, the big burly coming. Like the big revamp the whole thing, dude is all about the trenches, right? So I'm gonna start off with a position group that we've struggled with. I like Byron Murphy. I think that he's a big short run.
You're taking him at 12? Wow.
Well, I really like him simply because
he's mini Aaron Donald.
Yeah, he's got that. He's got that thing, right? And I think that's important because it's been a position that the Broncos have actually struggled with for a long time. And I mean, start going back. I mean, it's been a while since we've been in a position where we've had, you know, a real solid interior pass rush on the team, and even run stopping also on the team as like that blend between A and B. So that's a huge deal for my Denver Broncos. He is a little bit shorter, but he does have some great run stopping ability as well, which is a good combination, especially considering those guys both have teams and coaches which are really pushing the run game. So I think that'll be important to have a yin to the yang, so to speak, on the Denver Broncos, because the first road to the playoffs is through your division. And so You got to first match up well with them, and I think that's an important thing to consider. I'm going to give 2 players as my second one because I actually think that these are 1A, 1B, and I'm not sure who's going to be there. So it's either Fashanu or Alt. I just don't know which one will be there if they're going to be there.
You're going to take them at 12? You think they're going to drop that far? I don't think so.
One of them will.
I think one of them might. And so, and here
there's going to be too many QBs going in this.
Right. I think there's going to be too many QBs, and I think a few of the teams up top are going to start wanting the wide receivers because they already have their quarterback, or they think they have their quarterback, whatever the case may be.
Might be
like for example, then.
Well,
here's an example though. Like Robert's team is picking number 5. You think they're picking a quarterback?
No.
Oh,
we might.
Yeah. Just to trade him.
According to some of these, NFL pundits. Yeah,
Well, Robert, Chargers are going to Charger. That's all I got to say. Okay?
Yeah,
they're going to trade Herbert, and then Harbaugh's going to take his boy JJ, and then the rest of the Michigan Wolverines, and we're good to go.
So, one of my potential predictions here in the offseason is we're starting to see some dissension within the ranks in the Broncos, which I actually don't think is a bad thing. I believe that we're starting to see some of those entitled style players that were drafted under the Elway regime start to get upset that there's been a regime change. And I think it's unfortunately, but I do think that for Broncos fans, as much as you grow to, love your team, I think it's time to start moving on from some of those guys. I'm looking at guys like Garrett Bowles. I'm looking at guys like Cortland Sutton. I'm looking at guys like Jerry Jeudy. I'm looking at guys like Justin Simmons. I'm looking at those types of core players that have been on the Denver Broncos roster. And if we're being honest and truly honest with ourselves as Broncos fans, we have not made the playoffs since Super Bowl 50.
Woo!
Man.
So, and for those of you that are struggling with math, carry the 1. That's 8 years. Okay. So
before us,
almost a decade.
Yeah. So we're getting closer to a decade than we're not. Okay. That's a bit of an issue for me. My team has had a very long storied success of being very competitive despite people thinking they shouldn't be, which is fine by me. And we have done, generally speaking, very well up until the last decade. Right. And so we need to get over this. We need to start pushing past this. So I could see us trading Bowles. I could see us trading some of these other pieces, trying to build out those picks, save that cap space, bring in some, bring back Cam Fleming, for example, on a 1 or 2 year kind of cheaper deal to have that depth piece there. But perhaps target a guy like Alt or Fashanu, whoever's going to be there, maybe at 12 or something like that. My last guy and the third guy that I'm going to, rhyme off here is one of my favorite positions on the football team, also on the offensive line, that is currently manned by a disappointment that we signed in the offseason in Mike McGlinchey. And that is the right tackle position.
Yep.
Fuaga. That guy is a guy.
He is a
guy.
Fuaga is him.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is a guy. And when you talk about all of the things that McGlinchey struggled with, Fuaga is generally a better, in my opinion, I think is a better run protector. I think he's a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
I think he's less injury
prone. He can't pass block, dude.
And he can't pass pro at all.
No.
Yeah.
I said that when you guys signed him. I was like, I don't know why he did that. He's a liability.
Right. Yeah. And so when I look at that and I look at Fuaga, I think that he is an immediate upgrade over McGlinchey. I think that it is unfortunate, but much like Russell Wilson, I think that McGlinchey was a poor signing in the offseason, but I think that he is an excellent and serviceable backup for our team, despite the fact that you're then overpaying him.
Yeah.
Right? So I think you have to simply eat that as a team and say, yeah, we messed up again. Let's stop making stupid choices. But let's start correcting things and moving forward in the right direction, and let's look at a guy like Fuaga. Just for the record, and for everyone else here that is a member of Broncos country, and also for the rest of those that are just fans of all the other teams in the AFC West, I have a much different approach to building a football team than most other people. Most other people are saying, sign the flashy wide receiver, go and grab your quarterback, and look pretty and great. In my opinion, that is a really dumb choice.
Dumb choice,
because the problem that you're going to end up with is twofold. One, you may well have actually drafted your guy. Truly, you may have drafted your guy. But if the dude is getting clocked on every play, he's probably not going to develop at the rate that you would like for him to develop at. And therefore you're going to struggle, and you're not going to do as well as you otherwise could with that same draft pick behind, say, a better offensive line and a
look at Bryce Young.
Right.
Look at a lot of guys that go early and don't.
David Carr.
David Carr. I mean, arguably even Sam Darnold probably would have looked better if he had a better team around him, right? Like he would have been able
Josh
to.
Rosen might have been better.
I think Josh Rosen was the lost cause to begin with.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude did look like a legit NFL QB coming into the draft.
In college he did.
Yeah, in college. So no surprise, I basically go interior defensive line as my option, a replacement left tackle in either Alt or Fashanu, and or who I think is going to be a more realistic pick for my team, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, will be Fuaga. And frankly, if that pick is run up and it's Fuaga, you may hear me from across the border from up here in Canada with the cheer on my side, because I'm really going to be.
And you should be. And you should be.
Yeah.
You should be.
So, anyways, with that in mind, I'm throwing over you, Angelo. Those are my
that's a perfect segue, my friend. Yeah. That is a perfect segue, because I just want to all the Raider Nation people right now. The reason why I'm wearing the silver and black, and as you guys all know, who's been watching me for months on Protect the Shield or the Captain Jack Rackham channel, I wear the green because it is the color for organ donation. I am a liver transplant survivor, 19 months right now. Just talked to my liver transplant doctor today. So not going to give you the medical update, but I am going to give you the Raider update. And just like Richie Riche had said, I have been saying, and you can look at all the shows, this is why I love it when it's recorded, since December, Rich, since December, when everybody was eviscerating me for not wanting to get Jane Daniels, I said, Fuaga is your first pick. Number 13, you take him at number 13, because that guy is the best guy. And now that everybody's seen him in the combine, would any of you turn him down for any other talent if you're trying to build your team? You're not, because Fuaga is so good, actually. He's so fast, he can play right guard. So I've scouted this guy now. Like, I've seen every tape. And I actually believe, Rich, he can also play left tackle. I really do. I think this guy is so good that he can take any of those positions, but he would be a solid right tackle. And for Raider Nation and Raider fans, I got to give you a little history lesson. He really, like, stylistically wise, man. You guys might remember a guy by the name of Bob Boomer Brown, who, yes, he only played for us at the tail end of his career in 71. And in that 70s, it's still arguably that the Raiders had the greatest offensive lineman in that 70s era. But he plays that mean. He literally, all of his penalties were because he was looking forward to hitting the guy so much that he jumped the gun. Like, this is that guy. He's a Raider. He plays hard. So we would all be upset, Rich, if you took him at 12, but you should take him at 12. And the word is now that he might go to 5. Like, honestly, like, if Marvin Harrison's not there, there's talks that Harbaugh is going to be like, screw that, I'm taking Fuaga at 5, right? There's talks that Tennessee might take him, right? That's 7. There's talks that the Jets, for sure, who's going to get rid of Mekhi Becton, is going to take him at 10. Unless, of course, the Jets do the Jets and screw this up too, right? Which is possible. Okay?
Oh, absolutely. Probably likely.
Yeah. So Fuaga's been my guy, Rich. Fuaga's been my guy since December. And that's who I've been saying at 13. So for all of you guys who are asking, that's what it was. Looking at this draft, though, and since we're talking about the draft, please watch last week's show. When last Wednesday, we already covered all the Raiders who we currently have. If you want a quick reminder, we did an awesome Trenches show on Sunday that Rich actually showed up for. We talked a little bit about Filipino cuisine, but we mainly talked about the trenches, right? We mainly talked about the trenches because for all the Raider fans that have been hating me for saying, why in the world would we trade the farm to go get a guy? You're not a real Raider if you don't study your history. And I'm gonna talk about you a little bit here, Robert. I love that you're such a passionate Chargers fan, right? But you're like 3 years older than my son. And I wonder, are you such a passionate Chargers fan? Did you watch them in the AFL old days, watch those old tapes, really get going? And the reason why I bring this up is when I was in the boxing world and I'm at Wildcard Gym with Freddie Roach, I could always tell the difference between a fan who would walk up to me and talk to me about the hot fighters or the new people within the last 5 years, and then someone who wanted to have an intelligent conversation with me about Sugar Ray Robinson, Jake LaMotta, right? Like old school. Roberto, let's talk about Roberto Duran. Let's talk about what he meant back then, right? In the 70s, going into the 80s, stuff like that. So if you're a real Raider fan and if you're listening to this, did all of you forget that the reason why there are football fans, the reason why when we talk football and toughness and sacrifice and grit, we're all talking about Jim Otto, baby. The ultimate Raider. The ultimate Raider. And it's like what Rich said about how, oh, you want the sexy pick and, oh, Xavier Worthy. Like, yeah, we didn't pick Cliff Branch till way later. But from the 60s to the 70s, the 70s to the 80s, the 80s to the 90s, we had dominant linemen. So let me remind everybody in the Raider Nation that we picked up Art Shell, who is arguably top 5, like in the greatest 100 players of all time, right? And we didn't even pick him number 1, by the way, but I'm just saying, Art Shell was 1968 third-round pick. And in that time, too, we also, in the second round, took Ken Stabler, right? So, but Art Shell, so you paired up Art Shell with Jim Otto, right? And then here's the one. Did people forget that before we did Art Shell, 1967 first round pick, Gene Upshaw, everyone? Remember that guy, Gene Upshaw? Remember how good he was, right? And for the rest of, like, I mean, the stories are, and again, I didn't live that long. I was born in 75. But if you're a real fan, you're going to look back at this because it really makes you more of a football fan. Whether you're a Broncos guy, a Chiefs guy, Chargers guy, if you guys really want to get into football, you might want to look at them old footages of the 1960s, 1970s Raiders. Okay,
you're murdering people.
The story was Buchanan was punishing us so much, the Kansas City Chiefs defensive lineman, that was it. It's like, no, we're taking Upshaw. We're taking Gene Upshaw just so that we can handle Buchanan because we're tired of him getting through, right? That's kind of like the direction. So Art Shell, Gene Upshaw, Jim Otto, okay? So stop hating me for saying we don't need a quarterback because we don't need a quarterback. Would we like a quarterback? Sure. Would it be reaching for a quarterback to get Jaden Daniels? Absolutely reach. Absolutely reach.
At 13?
But we need generational linemen to take us for the next 10 years or more. Okay? So we have Colton Miller. Okay? He needs a partner. Okay? He needs a partner, but we need to really build the line. So Fuaga was my number 13 pick. But here you go, Rich. I've been playing around, and I probably have done my best draft last night in the draft simulator. Okay? Probably the best one I've ever done. I traded down, Rich. I traded down. I traded down because, and my opinion was, oh, yeah, somebody will probably take Fuaga now. So Rich just took Fuaga at 12. The Raiders at 13. So at 13, I said, you know what? Let me trade down. Okay. Let me go ahead and just real quickly, because I got the time now. The trade down for everybody who's like, well, I don't see how that's possible. I traded down to 19. Okay. I traded down with the Los Angeles Rams. And the way the mock draft worked is at number 13, the Rams wanted to go get Jared Verse, which is very possible, by the way Jared Verse looked. That's a guy that is amazing, Jared Verse. So I traded down. The Rams gave me the 19th pick, 2 number 5s, and their number 6, right? So anyways, why did I do that? Why would I be so stupid as to trade down? Because there is one other guy that I want in this first round, and that guy's name is Jackson Powers Johnson. Yeah, I'm bringing it all full circle back to you guys now. Jim Otto, right? Okay, now, to be fair, Jim Otto was amazing at AFL days. True legend. The guy lost a leg for crying out loud to the game of football, people. All right? That's a Raider. But the guy that we drafted after him, that then took over and won 3 Super Bowls as a center, his name is Dave Dalby. Dave Dalby manned that with Gene Upshaw, Art Shell, over the next, few years of dominance, was able to win 3 Super Bowls, right? And having a center, like a real center, is kind of like everybody's wondering, why am I so high on Jackson Powers Johnson? Because if Chris Jones actually stays, Lord help us, right? If Chris Jones stays to the Kansas City Chiefs, I need somebody to finally be that Gene Upshaw to Buchanan. I need somebody to be like, that's fine. We're going to go one-on-one. You might have more experience, Chris Jones, but I'm 330. I move fast. I'm quick with my legs. My hips are good. This is going to be a nice little battle to get you tired. That's fine, right? I want someone like that. I want JPJ. Taking JPJ also, though, kind of opens the door up for us to have the ability to get a quarterback in the second round, which I know this is an unpopular thought, but I still believe that Penix is dropping, Bo Nix is dropping. Like, JJ McCarthy is being hyped up, so I'll agree with you guys on the fact that McCarthy, but kind of starting to sound a little bit like how Will Levis was being pumped up last year. Don't you guys agree that that's kind of like where we're at? Like, McCarthy is good, though. Don't get me wrong. But for all the Raiders, McCarthy the 13. No, I wouldn't take McCarthy at 13. I mean, I still think it's too high of a grade. It's like, do I like McCarthy? Yes. He's young. Yes. He's 21. So if we had 4 years to build this kid, he's probably going to be pretty good. I don't have 4 years. I'm a playoff team next year if I get this right. And if I get this right, hey, man, look, I don't want to see that face, Robert. Because we're bogus penalty away from being a playoff team this year. The Jack Jones penalty is as bogus as it gets. All right. It's not our fault that our Raider players move so fast that the officials blow the whistle too quickly. All right. So I'm going center, and I'm going Jackson Powers Johnson. And for that next pick, because I get what you're saying, right? Like, you're thinking about taking Byron Murphy. Dude, I wanted Byron Murphy that was my number 2 guy on the board because I'm the one that scouted him too. I said it since December. And other than he was getting through to Penix in that Texas game until Michael Penix looked at his line and said, guys, you need to buckle down. And then guess what happened? Texas never touched him again. And then we saw the Michael Penix that everybody started saying, this guy might be a first-round pick, right? That leadership ability is what graded him as a first-round grade. What takes him out of that first-round grade, which is why I believe he's dropping in the second round, is the injury. The injuries is this real. There's going to be teams that are multi-billion-dollar teams that are going to be scared to take a guy that got injured so much. Shoulder, double knee, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, Raiders aren't scared to take him. So the way I'm going, and I'm doing it a little bit differently than you guys, is I'm taking JPJ into first. I believe that the Raiders have an opportunity to go get that guy and get more picks. In this draft that I did, my second pick was Michael Penix. Got him at number 44.
Wow.
Okay. And I'm telling you guys, I am following the historical reference of when Ken Stabler was taking in the second round. I am telling you that Penix, nobody spins that ball prettier. This guy's got grit. There's rumors that he didn't run to 40, but he can actually run to 40 in 4.5. So he's got some legs to him. Okay. And Michael Penix is the type of guy who has the grit and the strength and the hey man. That's wrong. Okay. That's
Biggie.
Great to say. The guy went to the Hall of Fame, by the way, for fighting for the rights of football players so that they can have better health care and better aftercare. Sure. So that's just not even right.
It still doesn't mean it's not funny.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, but anyways, Michael Penix is the guy that I would want as the next person. And again, just my whole point more, Rich, is that the Raiders need to remember, Raider fans need to remember that it's about the fight on the inside. It's about the trenches. I mean, heck, Alex, you played the position. You understand what I'm saying? It's like boxing in there. The most skilled, smartest, most intelligent players in the trenches are the ones that win the battle. And the Raiders were winning those battles in the 60s. The Raiders were winning those battles in the 70s. The Raiders were winning those battles in the 80s. And even in those early 90s days, we lost to Buffalo. I get it. From my freshman year to my senior year, every chance I wanted to see the 49 or the Raiders going into the Super Bowl, I always had to see the Bills kill our dreams, right? But at the end of the day, like, let's not forget the Raider legacy of O-lines. Right. Let's not forget that. And then I'm still with the whole Penix thing at second. I would never take him at first. There's some Raider people that want to get him at first. But I'm taking Penix in the second. And then there's a slew of other people that I can take again at offensive line in the third round. One of the names I want to bring up, Rich, is I'm going to butcher it. Kieran. Did you guys? I don't know if you guys saw this dude, Kieran Amegadjie from Yale. I think that guy is a straight up sleeper that could be amazing. He's got some serious talent. Like,
played a line at Yale though.
Yeah. All right, stop, man. Intelligence is one of the most important parts of being.
Yeah, but what caliber defensive lineman did he go against in an Ivy League schedule
I get it.
Compared
no,
to
I understand.
SEC? He wasn't going against Byron Murphy, you know.
No, I get it. No, I get it. I'm just talking that to be fair, when I did this draft too, Alex, a lot of the top names that we're talking about, whether it was Mims, Latham, like even some of the second round grade, they were gone by then because I went Jackson Powers Johnson and then I went Michael Penix. So I couldn't go like back to back, even though Al Davis has been known to go back to back linemen in those storied years of the Raiders. I couldn't go back to back linemen. So that's why I'm just saying. So I guess I want to wrap it in a bow and just say to everyone that the Raider way is building from the inside out. Antonio Pierce even said, I want to build a team from the inside out. And he's on record saying, I actually joked around with Telesco about getting us more picks. You know how they say in all jokes, there's some truth? I don't think he was joking that much about getting more picks. I think he wants more picks because there's a lot of Grady inside out players that we can get to build this thing. And as much as I've seen Jane Daniels, I agree with everybody that he's great. I think that if developed correctly, yes, if that guy can get protected and he can get developed and he can get the Patrick Mahomes treatment, he could be generational. I will give Jane Daniels that. But I will also say that Jane Daniels can end up like RG3 and do amazing for 1 year, get completely injured because – and if you're you guys who think that I'm wrong, watch the Alabama game. Looked amazing in the first half, then got taken out in the second half. That's in a college game. He's going to see that every week, guys. He's going to see that every week. So for everybody who keeps saying to me, I hate you, Angelo, because you don't want to give up the farm to go get Jane Daniels. I don't want to give up the farm to go get Jane Daniels. I think we need to go back to our old Raider way and build the line. And my final point, again, to wrap it up, Rich, and I'll toss it back to you, is I don't know if you guys remember the famous Elway to Marino whole documentary, right? And how Marino all the way dropped. Just a reminder for everyone, it was us that passed up on Marino. Marino was the pick after we picked. And for all of you guys who are like, well, that was stupid. For the Raiders at that time, it wasn't, because the guy that we picked is a center by the name of Don Mosbar. We picked him because we already had Ken Stabler. We still had Ken Stabler and LaMonica, and we didn't need to get Marino, even though Marino became this. That to me is the comparison of the Justin Herbert. We could have taken Justin Herbert when we still had Derek Carr, and we didn't take Justin Herbert. So same thing happened, right? Like, we passed up on Marino because we wanted to get Don Mosbar. So if you're a historian and you understand the Raider way, we've only had 3 centers from 1960 to 1994. Can you imagine hitting a home run that good? That you basically went Otto and then Dalby and then Mosbar. Hall of Famers. So that's my O-line thing for you. Go ahead, Rich. Take it away.
Well, I mean, there's some validity to that, because you end up with a better offensive line, and you can make a line not only look better, but you can also make a quarterback look better because they have more time to throw, because you're solidifying protection. So I do think there's some sense in that. However, that strategy only works when you eventually pull the trigger. So as an example, let's say AOC 4 starts to look a little bit better because you're starting to build the line around him. Fine, fair enough. But at some point, you have to be willing to do what the Chiefs did. And let's just be real, it was the right decision.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely. I'm all in on that.
Yeah. But by saying, all right, we've gone a couple years here. We've gotten, the right pieces, generally speaking, on the team, where we've got what looks to be a budding good tight end, what looks to be a pretty interesting wide receiver that's looking pretty solid in this Tyreek Hill dude. And then it's like, all right, we got a good line. We got a reasonable defensive line. It's like, now we need the quarterback, because right now the problem is Alex Smith seems to be able to take us kind of to here, but we need to be here.
Yeah.
And
so, I 100% agree.
Yeah. So I think that there needs to be a willingness to kind of pull what KC did, which is build the lines for a year or two. And then you got to be willing to kind of go from what is probably going to be 15 to 20, trade a couple first picks to get yourself back up into the early stages of that first round in order to get your guy.
Absolutely. So here's my only.
And by the way, that's what I want my team to do.
No. And Rich, can I just say this so that the Raider fans that are listening to this don't? Yeah. I mean, I spent an entire half-hour segment on the trade up on how to get Jaden Daniels with Chris, who of Protect the Shield, who kept turning me down. When I even said to him, I said, Robert, you're the Chargers. I give you a call. I say, Harbaugh, I'm going to give you 3 number 1s. Protect the Shield. Chris, he said Harbaugh would say yes. Protect the Shield. Chris Kimber said, no way, man. I can't even give up that much for Jaden Daniels. And that's the Raider. That's Protect the Shield guy, right? So it's really swung around now to understanding what I've been saying this whole time. But to your point about Patrick Mahomes, you are absolutely correct. And let me just say right now, Robert, I'm calling you the Chargers. I'd like to trade up to number 5 to try to get Jaden Daniels. I will give you a number 1 this year, so that's the swap. And I'll give you the number 1 next year, and I'll give you a number 3. You willing to take that?
No.
Aha!
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
There it is. Because that, Rich, was the Patrick Mahomes deal. I am totally willing to give you the pick swap of number 1, my number 1 next year, and I'll give you a 3.
Mahomes, the Mahomes deal was different, though, because they were trading up to 10. You want to trade up to 5. That is,
I know, but no. It's not the difference, because the Mahomes deal was them trading from 27 to 10.
Right.
I'm only asking to go from 13 to 5. And you said yourself, man, if you don't have Marvin Harrison, you want to trade back.
No, but you're Angelo, this is ultimately the difference. You are at the number 5 pick. You're moving to the number 5 pick, which means that you've only got 4 dudes that have come off the board at that moment, which basically means that when you pick there,
pick of anyone,
you've got a massive swath of guys to pick from, which gives you tremendous opportunity to build your team. There's a price. There's a price for that.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
No, you're right. You're right.
And it is certainly a bigger price than trading up to 10, because at 10, you've got another, 4 or 5 guys that are gone at that point, and you're in a much. I'm not saying you're in a much different, but you're in a bigger differential at that point.
And at the same time, Mahomes wasn't looked like he wasn't being talked about like Caleb Williams and Drake May and these guys are.
I understand.
Like, Mahomes was just the guy they wanted.
Yeah, no, he wasn't even being because again, Deshaun Watson was the guy during that time.
Trubisky.
So just real quick then, and for you guys who want to watch this fun show that we did on Sunday, check it out. But okay, Robert, I'm calling you. I'm willing to give you the first this year, the first next year, the second this year, and the second next year. Are you willing to take that? For me to go from 13 to 5.
Yeah, I'd take that. Two ones and 2 twos.
It's a little closer to even in your eyes? A little closer to even?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to move into the top 5, regardless of what you're trying to draft, if you are trying to move into the top 5, it's going to cost you at least 2 firsts and 2 seconds. That's the starting point. Because then you start looking at what's available at 5. Because if you're looking to take a quarterback, it's going to be a little bit different because obviously we're expecting to see probably 2 or 3 QBs gone by that point, whether it's the teams that are already picking in that order taking them or teams trading into the top 5 to try to get them. So I think it really depends on the draft. It depends on the talent that's in the draft, but it also depends on who's been taken up to that point. Because like Alex said, with the Chiefs, they waited until the absolute last moment to where they thought, all right, we cannot let him drop any further. We're trading up now to get him. And this is our dude. We believe this is our guy. Push everything to the table and trade for it because we believe in him. When a team and a franchise decide this is our guy, and they make this decision way before the draft, obviously. They have their draft board set up. If this dude falls to us or falls to this position, we are comfortable moving pieces to go up to that position to get him. And I think that's going to be what happens with the Raiders if you guys do decide to move up, regardless of what happens. And then this kind of touched on what you said earlier about why don't the Chargers trade now. I think this is the exact reason why you don't trade now is because you wait for a team to get desperate, to get antsy, like, okay, that's the guy we want. Is he going to fall? Is he going to fall? Okay, he fell. Let's go. Let's make the move now. So I think it'll definitely play in a lot to what you guys do. Obviously, it will because you're picking at 13, but I think the first 4 picks are going to be really, really crucial in seeing how this draft turns out because I think 5 is going to be one of the most highly sought after picks because teams are going to trade up to try to go for a wide receiver. Teams are going to trade up to try to get their tackle. Maybe somebody is really desperate and they really love Brock Bowers and they're like, we're not going to let anybody else even have the chance at him. We're just going to take him. So I think you guys, like Rich said, eventually do need to make that push where it's like, all right, this is our guy and we're going to go get him regardless. It could be this draft. It could be this draft, but I'm with Alex on this one. I don't see it. I see it like what you were saying, Angelo. You guys take O-line, trade back.
You're with me then. This isn't the draft to trade all of it for the one guy. And the problem with us is we're so transparent, Rich and Alex, that Antonio Pierce already told you if there's one guy we're trading up for, there's only one name, and that's Jaden Daniels. So the only way you hear that phone call for Chargers to Tennessee is if somehow Jaden Daniels doesn't get picked in the second or the third.
But it's interesting too because you got the Patriots and Cardinals who have already said like we're not trying to go QB. So you're looking at potentially, Chargers kind of having the run at anyone that's not a quarterback. And so I think that's why you see them wait because that could be just as valuable to some other team, as one looking for a QB. So it's a lot of dominoes have to fall before we see what shakes out. But Yeah, I agree with what you're saying and what Richie's saying, and I think that's kind of, you, not to be smug, but the Chiefs have certainly shown the blueprint of how to build a roster to some degree, and it wasn't by chasing the QB first and then going around that. It was like piece by piece building it up and then making the move to, our guy. And it's like, every year there's 3 to 4 QBs that are, can't miss prospects. So it's not like you won't find that opportunity, 2-3 drafts from now. And hell, it may even be a better one than the 5 guys we're talking about now.
Yeah.
Well, so for the record, Rich, totally willing to give you, Robert, 2 firsts and 2 seconds for your number 5.
I'll just happily take that.
Yeah. So I think these are going to be some really interesting days ahead. I think for our teams.
Oh, yeah.
I think the next phase of all of this will be which players our teams mutually agree to release and move on from. The Broncos did move on from some people. There was one due today. Well, I'll talk about that next Wednesday. In terms of on the Broncos, I expect to see some trades coming up. I expect to see some other things start to happen as the league year gets into full swing. And then we'll start seeing the rosters getting rebuilt after they get under the salary cap to kind of finagle and work things out. You'll also see some other players rework their deals to allow more cap space for the team while still getting their money. That's kind of the way it works.
Some extensions to try to draw out that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really where the league's going to be starting going at this point of the year. And then, of course, you're going to get the draft nonsense, which is the dude that you thought was going to be a revolutionary talent is actually an awful person. Didn't you hear? He looks really awfully at the old lady yesterday walking across the street. He should go.
Caleb Williams is the new Russell Wilson. You guys should let him fall.
Yeah. So we're going to hear all that nonsense over the next few weeks here, guys. But with that in mind, our show is wrapping up to an end. Love the topics today. Got in really deep into some of the weeds, kind of covered off some really interesting stuff. For those of you who are just joining us late, go back and rewatch. We do appreciate you joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, next week is going to be again some line discussions, but we're going defensive side of the ball this time rather than offensive side of the ball, which is honestly just as interesting to start discussing. And then, of course, we'll start talking about some of the moves that inevitably will have taken place over the next week. But until next time, guys, where the West Side is the best side.
Peace.